Hi everyone, welcome back to the Mind Game channel. Today we're diving into the philosophical themes of Amphorius in Honkai Star Rail, specifically how they manifest Yogachara thoughts through the path of remembrance. Because Buddhist philosophy is profound and HSR storytelling is complicated, I'm going to split this topic into two parts. This episode focuses on Evernight and the Garden of Recollection, also serving as a primer on Yogachara philosophy. In the next part, we'll look at Cyrene and Fuli, discussing how HSR bridges Yogachara with existentialism to achieve one of the most difficult mindset shifts in Buddhism. For those not listening as a podcast, you might notice the format has changed. For one, I'm finally on camera, or rather, a VTuber model of Dr. Ratio is. So this body is not my body. But from a Buddhist perspective, this body is also my body. And hopefully, by the end of these two videos on Amphorius, you'll understand what I mean. It goes without saying that I'll be holding nothing back regarding Amphorius spoilers. Even though we're focusing on Evernight's story in 3.6, there will likely be some reveals that are only available in 3.7. So if you haven't finished the Amphorius storyline, go do that first. This video will still be here when you get back. So without further ado, let's go on a wild ride about consciousness and the universe. Yogachara originated in India and later gained massive influence in China after being brought over by a monk named Sanzang. You might know him as one of the main protagonists of the Journey to the West. He is the master of Sun Wukong, the Monkey King. The fundamental tenet of Yogachara is, all phenomena are consciousness only. To understand this worldview, let's start with a classic question. When I am dreaming, everything feels so real. Then how do I know that my waking life isn't just a massive dream I've been having since birth? This is similar to the dilemma Descartes faced, but he and the Yogachara monks took completely different paths. Descartes takes a retreat in order to advance. He falls back to the final line of defense for existence. He says, cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. I know I exist because I am a thinking thing. He then tries to rebuild existence layer by layer on what he believes to be a solid foundation. Yogachara, however, offers radical acceptance to the same question. It doesn't say, I don't know whether it's all a dream. It says, yes, the world is just our mental representation of it. Everything is a manifestation of the vijnana within my mind, which is roughly translated to consciousness. From there, it breaks consciousness down into 8 layers to explore how the consciousnesses transform into the vast, seemingly external world we perceive. While Descartes looks outward, Yogachara looks inward. The classification of the 8 consciousnesses is the most distinctive feature of Yogachara. And fasten your seatbelts because this is gonna get metaphysical real quick. But it's absolutely essential to truly understand Amphorius. A quick heads up, we'll be using several terms in Sanskrit. I do not speak the language. I'll do my best with the pronunciation, but I think I'm gonna be bound to butcher some of the words. I'll keep the correct spelling on the screen so you can follow along with the concepts. Anyway, back to the 8 consciousnesses. First, we have the 5 sense consciousnesses: sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. These correspond to our 5 physical senses and provide our raw inputs. The 6th consciousness is the mental consciousness, the processing of these raw inputs. The 7th consciousness is where it gets interesting. It's called Manas Vijnana. And the 8th is even more fascinating, the Alaya Vijnana. Remember, Vijnana just means consciousness, so from now on I'm just gonna shorten them to Manas and Alaya. Before I explain these, just look at the trace upgrade materials from the Path of Remembrance. The blue and purple materials are literally called seedlings of Manas and flower of Alaya. To understand Manas, we have to work backward and understand the 8th, the Alaya. Alaya is often called the storehouse consciousness. Think of it as a warehouse containing numerous seeds. Remember our question, how does consciousness transform into the physical world? The answer lies in alaya vijnana. It stores the seeds of all phenomena. However, these seeds aren't all pure. They are divided into two types, tainted ones called seeds of asrava, and untainted ones called seeds of anasrava. Some of you may have noticed, isn't that the same term as in pure children of anasrava? That's right, but let's first understand the concepts involved. In Yogachara, asrava, meaning outflow, refers to the energy of consciousness leaking outward and transforming into afflictions. The tainted seeds of asrava produces these negative effects. By the way, sometimes due to the transcription from two different languages, asrava can also be asava. Asrava is the transcription from Sanskrit, and also the one HSR uses in-game, so we are gonna stick to those. Just keep this in mind if you plan to search online for further information. Anyway, when we say the seeds are tainted, don't think of it as the seed is dirty or covered in some kind of filth, because that should not change what it sprouts into. No, Yogachara uses a better description. Manifestation perfuming seeds, and seeds producing manifestations. Think of smoked salmon. During the smoking process, the smoke leaves a permanent mark, a specific scent within the physical texture of the fish. Similarly, when a manifestation, such as an action, occurs, it perfumes the seeds in your consciousness, leaving an imprint. A good action leaves a good imprint, and vice versa. This might sound like wild imagination, but let's test it in real life. Let's say I am a law-abiding citizen, but now I find myself in a bit of a financial struggle. I'd be very reluctant to go to the grocery store to shoplift a pack of smoked salmon, for example. That's because my past manifestations have perfumed my seeds with the tendency to be law-abiding. But say just this one time I'm too hungry and I steal that first pack, then the second and third times become much easier. The act of stealing has perfumed the seeds of my consciousness, making it easier for those seeds to manifest into an act of theft again. So that is the 8th consciousness. What about the 7th? Manas doesn't look outward. It doesn't care about the raw sensory inputs. Instead, it stares inward, fixated on the 8th consciousness. It clings to alaya and mistakenly identifies a piece of it as a self. There is a Yogachara classic called the 30 Verses Unconsciousness Only. It says, dependent upon it, the alaya, there develops a consciousness called manas. Having it, the alaya again, as its object of consciousness, and having the nature of always reflecting. If alaya is the warehouse of seeds, then manas is the warehouse manager. It watches the warehouse day and night and mistakenly believes that it is the owner of that warehouse. This delusion has consequences. It, manas, is always conjoined with 4 afflictions, known as view of self, confusion of self, pride of self, and love of self. These 4 afflictions are distinct but interconnected. Since this isn't a lecture on Buddhism and the Amphorius story doesn't explicitly distinguish between them, we won't get too in the weeds. We can broadly summarize them as attachment to self. This is the fundamental issue of manas. What the game does get into details is the concept of asrava, these outflows. Generally, these are divided into 3 types. Kamasrava, the outflow of sensual desire, Bhavasrava, the outflow of existence, and Avidyasrava, the outflow of ignorance. Yogachara teaches that spiritual practice, or cultivation, is the process of using good manifestations to perfume our seeds, turning tainted seeds into untainted ones. Once all these outflows are overcome and every seed becomes untainted, the 8 consciousnesses transform into 4 wisdoms of the Buddha. The 5 sense consciousnesses become the wisdom of accomplishing activities. It is the ability to take needed action to benefit all beings. The 6th consciousness becomes the wisdom of investigative awareness. It is the ability to observe all things without attachment. The 7th consciousness, manas, becomes the wisdom of awareness of sameness, shattering the barrier between self and the other. The 8th consciousness becomes the wisdom of great perfect mirror. The consciousness of alaya, now transformed into wisdom, is no longer a warehouse of seeds that constantly sprout and perish. It becomes a great mirror. It reflects the entire universe perfectly, but it remains unstained by what it reflects. Does that remind you of the crystal body of Fuli, or the crystal flower in the story Cyrene tells? We'll explore those in depth next time. For this video, we'll just focus on Evernight and the concept of these outflows. The narrative structure of Amphorius is quite intentional. The story of Evernight comes first to help us discern the asravas, the outflows, while the story of Cyrene follows to help us see in practice how those outflows are overcome and consciousnesses turn into wisdoms. However, Evernight's story is deliberately vague. The writers seem hesitant to reveal too much information about March 7th past life, so let's piece together what we actually know. First, we know that pre-amnesia March 7th was being haunted by the Garden of Recollection. This is explicitly confirmed in the first part of Evernight's character story. The memo snatchers surrounding Amphorius further corroborated this. They reveal that a pure child of a Nasrava leading the garden, for now let's just call her Mistress of the Garden, is trying to reclaim her lost sisters.
We are the sacrifice. The garden used us. The pure child of a Nasrava abandoned us. She just wants to find her lost sisters. Find them, kill them, reclaim them. If a new life is to be born, its seed has to be dead.
Here we encounter this quote: "If a new life is to be born, its seed has to be dead." Evernight also repeats it several times, always in quotation marks, indicating that she's quoting someone else. So where does the original quote come from? The only time in-game it appears without quotes is in the story of the light cone Texture of Memories. It says, "They sift through the cracks of yesterday, seeking seeds of memory. If a new life is to be born, its seed has to be dead." Since the subject is they, the pronoun for aeons, this suggests the phrase comes from Fuli. It is a maxim, a tenet of the path of remembrance. Both the Garden and Evernight cite it, but their interpretations differ wildly, which could be the source of their conflict. Regarding the title Pure Child of a Nasrava, I don't believe it means they've overcome all forms of outflow, otherwise they would be Fuli, the master of a Nasrava. Rather, it could mean they've achieved a Nasrava in at least one aspect of the 3. Their goal is to reach a state of true, total purity, free of any outflow, and in this case, aeonhood. The Mistress of the Garden likely interprets the maxim in this way: to achieve the wisdom of great perfect mirror, the seeds that constantly sprout and perish in the warehouse of alaya must vanish. But it is not just a simple killing, because killing would be a bad action that perfumes her seeds with negativity. Instead, she seeks to reclaim the seeds, to make them part of her. By absorbing them, she partially becomes them and transcends both them and herself. Through this reclamation, she forgoes the obsession of subjective individuality, shattering the attachment to self and overcoming Bhavasrava, the outflow of existence. The problem is that in this pursuit, she falls into another trap, Kamasrava, the outflow of sensual desire. The databank entry for the Eden of Blessed Insight, where Fuli resides, states that the memo keepers traverse through space, carefully selecting precious memories to offer to the Aeon. So she only wants precious memories. She only wants to reclaim other pure children of Anasrava. Consequently, the mistress of the garden falls into a craving for beauty and purity. But a great perfect mirror doesn't refuse to reflect something just because it's ugly, nor does it reflect more of something just because it's beautiful. Therefore, her path cannot truly achieve the wisdom of great perfect mirror. She will likely appear in the main story again as antagonist, as a philosophical foil. Moving on to pre-amnesia March 7th. She wasn't completely free of outflow either. In the animated short Dear March 7th, we see her being hunted by the garden, leading to the awakening of the Evernight personality to protect her. We can see Evernight's protective instinct for March throughout the story.
I am an obsession whose purpose is to protect you. The only memories I have are yours.
The you here doesn't just mean March 7th. It refers to the entire entity that is the pure child of Anasrava we briefly knew as March 7th and Evernight. In this dynamic, Evernight is the consciousness of Manas, and what she protects is the Alaya, where instances of March 7th constantly sprout and perish as a sequence of seeds, not even necessarily with the name March 7th. So we know March was born from six-faced eyes. When March and Evernight entered Amphorius, her physical body on the Express was also spontaneously frozen in six-faced eyes. The number 6 holds special meaning in Buddhism. The Heart Sutra describes emptiness as having no eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind. No color, sound, smell, taste, touch, or what the mind takes hold of. See, this takes us back to the first 6 of the 8 consciousnesses. Being sealed in six-faced eyes effectively means it cuts off the senses and the mental processing of them, naturally overcoming Kamasrava, the outflow of sensual desires. We know March could create six-faced eyes even before her amnesia, and we know the scepter system recognized her as a pathstrider of remembrance. My theory is that the six-faced eyes signifies March's method of cultivation, a way to achieve the status of pure child of Anasrava by cutting off the senses. However, this method also has its problems. Let's see what remains inside the eyes. The 7th and the 8th consciousnesses, the Manas and the Alaya. The Manas, taking the form of Evernight, still constantly guards and watches over the Alaya, forming attachment to self. Inside the eyes is me. Outside the eyes is not me. Thus, when the garden attacked, Evernight emerged for self-preservation, exposing the persistent issue of Bhavasrava, a clinging to existence. Evernight seems to have realized this. After escaping the garden, she wondered, where can I escape from the past, escape from myself? Her conclusion was that March 7th needed a, and I quote, blank starting point. Evernight believes that the reason she cannot escape attachment to self is that her memories are too heavy. In her words, when trapped by the remembrance, no new future can ever be born. Some people find Evernight's motives and actions strange. If her purpose is to protect March, why try to erase her? She was surprised by our March preserving herself, so it must not have been her original plan. If you consider her as the Manas watching over the Alaya, it all makes sense, because the March 7th we know is just a fleeting moment of the seeds that grow in the Alaya. Evernight only cares about maintaining the existence of a March 7th. To someone who believes new lives can only come from emptiness, erasing this March to let the next March be born is perfectly acceptable. Evernight didn't take that maxim literally. To her, birth and death aren't referring to the physical processes, they are an allegory of existence and emptiness. Remember the Yogachara says seeds producing manifestations? Plug it into this maxim and we get, to allow new possibilities to manifest into existence, the seed must be empty. This is just another way of saying,
only through abandonment and oblivion can souls walk from emptiness towards rebirth.
Evernight saw that painful past memories perfumed her seeds with outflows, leading to a cycle of suffering. Her solution is simple: just forget them. Therefore, she insisted March 7th needed a blank starting point. But the trap here is that oblivion does not purify the seeds that are already perfumed by past karma. Instead, it traps March in the third outflow, avidyasrava, the outflow of ignorance. The Buddhist classic Samyukta Agama describes avidya, the ignorance, as not knowing the past, not knowing the future, not knowing both past and the future. The third part isn't just a repetition, it refers to the causal link, the inability to see how our past shapes our future. Everenight's forced oblivion directly caused the ignorance of March. Furthermore, ignorance is the root of other two kinds of outflow, of sensual desire and of existence. This is why we see March 7th also tries to take pretty photos, sensual desire, and to find out about her past, attachment to self, falling right back into the outflows she tried to escape. However, our March 7th was incredibly fortunate. She was found by the Astral Express and set upon the path of Trailblaze. It was the Trailblaze that brought her to Amphorius, where she didn't just witness the life of another pure child of Anasrava, but actively participated in it. During the confrontation with Evernight, two specific facts convinced her to return the body to March. The first was the mystery of how March 7th maintained herself.
How did you find yourself again? After giving up all your memories and becoming an empty soul?
Looks like you aren't so omnipotent or omniscient after all, huh? The answer is simple. I have been dozing inside the camera all along, and I accompanied him during his entire journey.
You see, the camera was brought into Amphorius because the Trailblazer and Dan Heng knew it was March's wish, even though she was frozen in ice. So March continues to exist because her companions on the Express hold the memory of her in their hearts. Her existence is not an isolated, independent entity. Realizing this, that the self is interconnected and sustained by others, is the first step in shattering attachment to self. The second fact lies in March's description of the power of memory.
You don't know where they are, and you don't know what you actually remember. But when you need them most, the forces that have once changed your soul are guaranteed to appear again.
This made Evernight realize her own fallacy. Heavy memories can be the shackles of fate, but they can also be the power of the soul. It is not only through abandonment and oblivion can souls walk from emptiness towards rebirth. On the contrary, it is precisely because of the memories of the past can life shape a better future.
We can't go back to the past and make better choices.
But at least we can do better in the future.
Ultimately, Evernight agreed that the Trailblaze is a journey that carries the past, connects the present, and sails forward with courage. It is not a mirage built on a blank page. This is the real reason why she returns the body back to our March. Her final words to March are, "Paint your blank future with colors that are uniquely yours." Take a look at this shift. She leaves March with a blank future, whereas before she insisted on a blank starting point. This is the core of her character arc. Such a pity that it's hidden in her character story interface, and even if you pulled for her, you may not even go there to read it. To insist a blank starting point is a fear, afraid to be perfumed or stained by the world. A blank future, however, is open. It receives and carries any and all color. Evernight undergoes a classic hero's journey, returning to the initial state with a renewed perspective. Her final act is still one of oblivion, erasing the word pure child of Anasrava from March's memory. But the intent has completely changed. She finally understands the maxim: if a new life is to be born, its seed has to be dead. Death is not the opposite of life, it is simply another form of it. To think of death as non-existence is a delusion caused by the observer fixating on the past while life transforms from the past into the present. The death of the seed is its transformation into the sprout, the flower, and eventually the next cycle of seeds. The Heart Sutra says, form is no other than emptiness. Emptiness no other than form. Form is only emptiness, emptiness only form. This means form and emptiness, or in modern terms, phenomena and nothingness, are two sides of the same coin. Only by understanding this can one truly reach the state of true emptiness and wondrous existence. Evernight's original mistake was that in her haste to shatter the attachment to self, she became attached to the emptiness itself. It sounds paradoxical, but if you have an attachment for the existence of nothingness, you are still plagued by the outflow of existence. By choosing to give March a blank future, she acknowledges that the value of blankness is not the absence of color, but the possibility of embracing all colors. With this, she lets go of the attachment to emptiness and freely allows emptiness to give birth to existence.
If you ever need me again, feel free to awaken my power.
So that concludes our discussion on Asrava through the lens of Evernight's story. The stage is now set for Cyrene, the protagonist of our next episode. We'll see how these concepts we discussed today, blankness, seeds, and Anasrava, turns into practice through her journey. There shouldn't be a long wait until that video, as I wrote the two scripts together, but if Cyrene's video isn't out yet while you're watching this, feel free to check out my previous video on the Stellarons. For some reason, the video was glanced by the aeon of YouTube recommendation algorithm. While I'm not attached to view counts, I find much joy in reading the comments. Some pointed out my oversimplification of historical context, some shared their thoughts on the Stellarons, and most importantly, some told me that my video sparked in them the interest in philosophy. That is exactly why I started this channel, and I couldn't be happier about it. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video and that it helped you enjoy this wonderful game even more. Until next time, or as a certain someone would say, see you tomorrow. Oh damn, this quote is ambushing me with feelings. I'm gonna log off and go cry for a bit.